Oh, g'day everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by Crowcast, of course. A bit of a sick and sorry tale over the Anzac Day weekend, but we're not going to shy away from it, so let's crack straight in, shall we? That was a very successful theme song. Welcome everyone to round 7 of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by the motley crew at Crowcast, and it's a crew of 2 this weekend, apparently because the boss could take a sick day last weekend. Apparently it's all right for the staff to do so this weekend, but Big Man has shown up, so it won't just be me talking to you. How you going, mate?
Good, thanks, mate. Just me and you tonight. Very
Just
romantic.
you and me. Yeah, it'll be
So it should be
intimate, and we've got a good crowd in the audience. Don't forget, it's an interactive show, so if any of you want to come on and have your say, you're more than welcome to. Just stick your hand up in the Discord live audience there, and we'll get you on quick, smart, mate. What a shocker! What an absolute shocker!
Yeah, I hated it. It was awful. It was one of those games where if you could tell from the start we weren't on. Look, I mean, what was it, 3 to 4 goal loss? That papers over a few cracks. To be honest, it was worse than that. Slaughtered in midfield. Defensively pretty inept for most of the game. Reasonably efficient going forward, except for obviously with our goal kicking. But yeah, we scored a lot, like nearly half our score when the game was buried and done. So it's hard to take too much from that anyway. So yeah, really disappointing. These results happen. It's about how you respond to it, and we've got Carlton next week, who are now in good form. So real test for the boys, and if they don't get up for that, then with the fixture we have coming up, we might be in a bit of strife.
Well, I mean, I did a bit of a predictor, and I tell you what, we could be in all sorts, and we'll go into that in more detail, obviously, as we get along. As I said, if you're on the Discord live studio and you want to have your say, please feel free. Obviously, just with me and Big Man tonight, there's plenty of room for other comments, so don't be shy. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget, like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. It really does help us out. Mate, I'm not going to mess around. Let's get straight into it. Of course, for those who were living under a rock, it was the Dockers 12-13-85 to Adelaide 9-13-67. Margin there of, in the end, a flattering 18 points. It was really, as you said, not that close. It was 42 points, towards the end of the third quarter, and that was when Nixie decided he might make a bit of a move. Better late than never, of course. I think Freo really had put the cue in the rack by that stage anyway, so it was all a bit of a moot point. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about before we get into any sort of stats or anything like that, mate. I feel like this is a real turning point for Adelaide this season and for the coaching staff. And I feel like if they don't bite the bullet and make some changes now, then our season is done. What do you think?
Do you mean like personnel, or in terms of the way we're structuring, the way we're playing?
Let's focus on personnel first.
Yep. I mean, for me, Sorry, you go.
No, you go on, mate.
Yeah. Look, it was one of those ones where, as much as, I mean, the Giants game, like I said, it was tough conditions. So you could even argue that brought the Giants down to our level a little bit. But then again, the Giants aren't looking that flash now either. So we played a Freo team that was basically out of form. and we made them look like absolute superstars. And that's always a worry because we looked very easy to play against, and they looked very hard to play against. They looked super quick, and we looked slow and sluggish. So that midfield mix on the weekend did not work, and we might have to look at that because it looked really flat-footed at times. And look, personnel, there's definitely. I mean, I went into the team thinking that I was actually really quite happy with the selections given what we had. But for whatever reason, the mixes did not work, and it hasn't properly worked over the last 4 weeks, really. Particularly in the defence, I think that there's something not quite right there, whether it's instruction or whatever, or some individuals not quite getting it done, particularly in the key position stuff. So Mark Keane, for instance, he's really struggling back there now, and he was obviously cost us a few goals the other night. And our skip was flat-footed, kicking off the back foot all the time, hitting targets, straight to the opposition. If he's not playing well, our ball movement tends to really struggle. And if you look at the stats, I think Leedy was the only one over 25 touches, and our midfield just got slaughtered. So I think we need to look at our midfield and defensive setups because the guys didn't get it done this week.
Yeah, certainly I'm with you with regards to Mark Keane. I think he's gotten ahead of himself. I think he's got to get back to basics. He's got no right to be pushing and shoving and giving away 50s and all that sort of stuff. He's got a job to do, and he's got a primary role, and that is to nullify his opponent. And he's not getting that done at the moment. And I just feel like... he needs to be pulled back into line. I don't think that he doesn't seem composed in what he's doing, and there's too many fundamental things that he's getting wrong. Nick Murray, I'm prepared to give some leeway to. I don't think Nick's 100% right yet, which is a bit of a shame. He doesn't look... as dynamic on that knee. It's still heavily strapped, and I'm a bit disappointed.
Did you see him at the end of the game?
No, I didn't.
He had a moment, I reckon, pretty late in the game where he basically crumbled down on the halfback flank, and the camera sort of went away from him, but I was worried he'd done his knee again or something. It didn't look good. He got up and he was sort of limping off the field. I don't think that they've said anything. I guess that he hasn't done like anything major, but to me, it's just a sign that structurally that knee isn't very sound. So I think you're right. I mean, he wasn't terrible, but he's clearly restricted by that knee, and unfortunately, Keane hasn't been picking up the slack.
Well, and it's an indictment on our coaching and fitness staff. I mean, I know Burgess has got a mantra of teaching players how to play through niggles. And you might be carrying a little bit of a hamstring niggle or a calf niggle or something like that, and that's all well and good. But Murray is structural. He's either right or he's not, in my opinion. And I'm no doctor, and we don't know what the situation is there necessarily with him. But to the naked eye, he just doesn't look like he should be on the park at the moment. We've got Nick. We've got Geordie Butts in the twos. Who seems to be out of favour, but I just think Geordie Butts needs to come back in, and Nick Murray needs to get that knee right.
Yeah, the thing with Butsy too, it was interesting. He didn't play the last quarter today in the SANFL, so whether that's management, if they want to play him this weekend, or whether maybe he's injured himself, who knows? I guess we'll find out. But yeah, just thought I'd let you know that he pretty much didn't play the entire last quarter.
Yeah, right. Okay. In terms of the midfield, mate, I have some thoughts, and I was talking to Brownie this afternoon when he let me know that he was not feeling so great. We had a bit of a chat, and I think one of our biggest problems in the midfield is that 2 of our 3 main rotation midfielders are not genuine midfielders. Dawson's not a genuine midfielder, and Isaac Rankin is not a genuine midfielder at this stage of his career. So when you come up against genuine midfields, Sarong and Young, and that sort of a combination, we are going to get found out. Isaac, as I've said continually this season, win or lose, he ball watches at centre bounce. He's often flat-footed. And Geordie Butts does not have enough explosive pace to be able to gain any separation. And sides have worked out that if you apply frontal pressure to Geordie, he just dumps it around the corner. And it's of absolutely no use to us whatsoever. And I think it's about time that we actually started playing genuine midfielders in the midfield. And by genuine midfielders, I'm talking Saligo, I'm talking Peatling, I'm talking Schoenberg, I'm talking Berry, I'm talking Sid Draper. Sid Draper went back and played in the twos today and got 29 touches and something ridiculous, 13 contested possessions and 8 clearances or whatever the hell it was. Sam Berry kicked 2 goals, one off 24 or 25 touches. We have wasted development in these lads by continually going to the well with players that either aren't suitable or aren't up to it. And I include Matthew Crouch in that. And that's happened ever since we started being a bit of a sniff again for finals, and it's gone on for the last 3 seasons. And as a consequence, blokes like Schoenberg and Berry, Dowling, Charlie Edwards, who's now getting played off a halfback flank because we insist on playing Lockie Murphy in the middle in the twos, to the detriment of a lad who was drafted as a midfielder. And we are going to burn these players. And whether they're good or not enough or not is not the point, in my opinion, big man. We have not given them an opportunity to show whether they're good enough or not.
Yeah, it's some good points you make there. One thing I will say about Edwards, just quickly, is that they train him as a halfback pretty much all pre-season. So I think they might be not happy with the contested side of his game, and they also really love his kick. So I think they're looking at him as sort of a Brodie Smith-esque replacement going forward. I'm not saying he couldn't be a midfielder, but he did also play as a halfback as a junior before moving into the midfield. So he's basically just gone in reverse there. I'm not saying it's the right decision, but I'm just saying there is a bit of credence to that one. I agree about Dawson's form, and his style of play. So I love the bloke. I think he's a fantastic player. I don't think we're maximising his abilities. And it's fanciful because, for so long we wanted that big body midfield, that tall, big, strong mid. And he's sort of that. Obviously he's tall and he can take a mark, but he's not a contested beast by any means.
No, he doesn't get through congestion.
No, he's not soft. He's obviously a brilliant tackler, but he's not a power player. And he's not going to, get through tackles. He's not going to stream ahead of the centre bounce and kick it forward that way. He's generally more of the sweeping receiver type.
Correct.
His clearance numbers aren't very good at all, really, for a guy who plays pretty much predominantly centre square. So I think we do need to look at that. I think it's affecting his game too. He is really at the moment dump kicking the footy, like you mentioned. He's such a beautiful kick, but he has an amazing ability to spot out opposition players when he kicks off the back foot.
Well, there's a technical thing with, sorry to interrupt you, but there's a technical thing with Geordie's kicking, and that is that he actually brings it from fairly high up, and it obviously works for him in general play, but when you've got to get the ball onto the boot quickly and effectively, and you're starting your ball drop from so high, you're bringing the ball down from above your hips, there's a fair amount of time for that kick to get shut down, and there's also a fair amount of time for that ball drop to get affected by pressure. And I think that's what we're seeing with him. And he's also, most of his missed kicks come off the inside of his foot, and I think that's because he's not actually staying over the ball, because he's not able to get into that kicking position he's rushed. As you said, we're not getting the most out of him. He is a halfback flanker / wingman. You can give him a cameo through the middle. You can give him a cameo up forward. He's got fantastic versatility. But as an 80% CBA player, that's not him. That's not him.
Yeah, and I think, as our list has developed, we've probably got a few more options coming through there. Not as many as I'd like, but certainly more than we did when we first started playing him in the guts. So I think we need to look at alternatives. He's definitely a natural defender in the sense that he's a great kick, a fantastic mark, and a very competitive one-on-one player who can lay a tackle or win a 50-50 contest. And so those are all the great traits of a defender. And we seem so really pigeonhole him right now as a midfielder / forward, which is he's not a natural forward. So I'm not sure what we're doing there. But yeah, I agree. That's one area, but he's not the only one. Like there's other issues there. As you said, Matty Crouch is not in form.
No. He's done, big man. He's done. He should never, ever. I know you're a fan. I know you're a fan. He should never, ever set foot in our team again. The end.
I mean, look, he hasn't been the same since that hip injury he got. So he started the year off pretty well in his first couple of games. He got the injury at training or during a game or whatever it was. And he's come back in the side and he's probably played one half decent game, which was against the Giants, in conditions that probably suited him because obviously they slowed the game down. It's because we've got Crouch and Dawson in there. And look, even Solly himself isn't an absolute speed freak. We are looking a bit one-paced in there. Obviously, Rankin is one that goes through that gives us speed. I know you mentioned him's another one. I'm less inclined to move him out of the midfield. I think that as much as he gives us potency up forward, which we probably lacked a little bit, I think that's less because of the personnel and more of that our ball movement is stagnated.
He's a defensive liability. He's a defensive liability, big man.
Yes and no, but every club has players that are, let's say, more offensively minded. I mean, Dusty Martin didn't lay a tackle for about 10 years and he still won them flags. You just got to make sure that when, a guy like Rankin's got to make sure he performs and he punishes the opposition with the strengths he has. And his contested game is really good. If you look at his contested numbers, they're through the roof, really, for a guy that's not exactly a big bustling dude.
I'm not. I've not ever said that he's soft. What I'm saying is
no. I'm not.
That he is such an opportunist that his mindset is very much about attacking and being aggressive and making something happen. They're all fantastic traits.
I reckon that's okay, but you need the other side to counter that with the other side of things. And we don't play a tagger. We refuse to play taggers. Teams are doing it right now, and they're doing it with success. Not every team, admittedly, but some of the better ones are, and it's working. We play Russian roulette with our centre bouncers and with our midfield matchups. And once again, I think as a whole, our midfielder isn't the easiest to play against, but generally at least one individual goes nuts each week against us. This week it was Brayshaw. And if you got a guy
Young
like
had a great game as well, and
Young as well, yeah, Strong's pretty good. Look, no, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, this week it's probably more than just Brayshaw, but I feel like he was probably the standout. I think he won the medal and all that. But I think that's there's something not quite right there, and I don't understand our hesitancy to do it. It's some weird fear of affecting structure, but look at the win-loss column. Something's got to change there. And I don't know why Nixie's been so hesitant to do it. Even Pikey was hesitant to do it. So it's something that's just stuck around for whatever reason. We had a guy in the reserves called Hugh Bond who would be perfect for a tagging role because he's a great defender and he's ridiculously fit. So you got a guy who can actually play midfield as well, so he knows where to go at stoppages. He hasn't been bred for that role whatsoever. He's been bred for a lockdown defender role, which is, that's great. But Max Michaelani and guys are in that defence right now. How is he going to get in? Well, get him in as a tagger. And I think that would balance our team and our midfield setup so much more because it would allow a guy like Rankin to thrive. It doesn't punish us as much for his deficiencies because we've got other guys like a Bond sort of cleaning things up on the defensive side. But we refused to do that, and we got burnt on the weekend because of it.
I'll tell you where he gets in. He gets in for Rory Laird because Rory Laird had 27 disposals on the weekend, 15 handball receives. 15 handball receives because he just seagulls out the back. He's not giving us anything whatsoever. And those kicks that he gets, I saw one passage of play where Matty Crouch and Roy Laird just handballed it back and forth to each other.
Yeah, I know.
And then Laird just dump kicked it. Like, they're of no use. And the reason why I'm so aggressive about this tonight is because, like, you've had you've graced us with your presence this season, and we're all better for it. I've been fucking talking about this for 6 years, big man, and nothing has changed. And it really is about time. It's about time that something changed. If Malcolm Blight came into, like, hypothetical, if Malcolm Blight of 97, 98 came in to coach this team right now, what do you reckon he'd do? What do you reckon he'd do?
Like, what would Blighty do? Blighty would. I think you're definitely right about he would get rid of a couple of the guys that are on the older spectrum that are slowing down our speed of ball movement. So that would be Crouch. That would be Laird. He would move Dawson halfback. Yeah, well, look, Tex looked like someone who shouldn't have flown over to Perth the other night.
Well, what happened to managing Tex? And now we're in a situation where we're out of forwards and he's got to play.
Yeah, we talked about that. There should have been the Gold Coast game. We didn't do it. And then you run the risk then when an injury does come up, and key forwards do tend to get injuries. And now we're one down, and maybe Fogg comes back this week, but now Thilthorpe's, got some issues with his fingers, so who knows what's going to happen there.
Well, if he had a compound dislocation, he shouldn't be playing.
I can't believe he got if that pierced the skin. That's amazing that he came back in the field. Not just because credit to him for toughing it out and actually playing some decent footy when he came back on, but also that would put him out there. It sounds a bit like negligence to me, but I'm not.
Absolutely,
I'm like you. I'm not a doctor either, but I'm just like, damn, that's something I'd be like, okay, you're done for the night, But it wasn't like we're going to win that game anyway. Anytime
it pierces the skin, you've got an infection situation. So for me,
looked in pain,
it was. Yeah, look, I guess it's a bit fanciful, I guess, to make that Blight comparison, but it strikes me that a coach that wants success and see Matthew Nicks coaches as if he's part of the team instead of the overarching leader of the team. He coaches as if he's part of it. So he's not prepared to make decisions that are going to impact on his relationships with certain players. It took monumental drops in form to get rid of Brodie Smith. We can hardly pry Riley O'Brien out of there. We can't get Rory Laird out of there, even though he's a shadow of him for his former self. Gives us bugger all, and just seagulls out the back. He's crutching on Matty Crouch, and I think we've got a squad that is good enough to play finals football. But if he doesn't grow some balls, if he continues on with the same selection policies and the same, going to the well on the same players, he's going to get what he's always got, which is a 12 to 15 ladder spot. And I did a ladder prediction, and if he doesn't make changes, we'll be sitting 12th and 3 games out of the 8 after the bye rounds are finished.
No man's land.
Well, done after 15 games.
Yeah,
done.
That's him gone, isn't it? It has to be.
So if he doesn't realise that,
even for us fans,
So if he doesn't sit down now and do that same analysis and go, well, shit, I'm last chance saloon here now. I'm hanging on to a spot on the 8th. We're in the 8 only by virtue of our big early season wins against teams that were undermanned. But now we're coming up against informed sides. All of a sudden, Carlton is a bit of a threat. And then we've got a showdown, and then we've got a couple of strong away games against good opposition, Collingwood and Sydney. And if he thinks that the same people that he's been picking for the last 2 or 3 years are going to get him a different result, then he's stupid. He's just stupid, because it's not logical.
I have to ask too, Fiend, like, not just personnel, but application. Two questions I got for you, and they're sort of related, but it's probably an intensity thing or an inability to match the opposition pressure. But firstly, where was the handball game on the weekend? We so many dump kicks, so many kicks off the back foot. If I could count the amount of times we would handball back to a player who would kick off one step and hit a target, hit the opposition, it'd be ridiculous. Like, it was infuriating to see. Like, we're playing against a team that was just so defensively suspect in the previous week. And I know Freo came to play, they copped a beating in the media and all that. Well, we made their defence look like absolute champions. And we had no dare, we had no run, we had no overlap. It was just long kicks, dump kicks off the back foot that just ended up to contests where half the time we lose them, guys like Pearce and whatever. It was infuriating. And not only that, but then on our side of things, our tackling was so poor, Fiend. Like,
it was terrible.
The one thing that I would say about the Knicks era is I think our tackling's always been pretty good. It used to be a real bad issue in the late Pike era, maybe / early Knicks era. But since maybe 2021, 2022, it's actually been a strength of ours. I think we've been a really good tackling team. We couldn't stick a tackle for our lives on Friday night.
No, and
now,
not only they were able to get their arms free all the time.
Yeah, and I know they've got some quick players like Bolton. He's a dancing fella, and there's a few others like that in their team, but they're not that quick, not that speedy and powerful and explosive. We made them look like that because we didn't come to play and match their intensity. So yeah, they brought the heat and we didn't. And why did that happen is perplexing to me, because we knew that they would come out firing, and we had just as many reasons to play, to win that game. And yet we were really, really cold to come out, and really didn't heat up at all until the last quarter when they went cold, because they had already put the cue in the rack, like you said. So I thought that was really disappointing. And at that stage, it's not, because those guys were getting it done. And even in previous years, those same guys were getting done like with their tackling, and even that went out the window. So yeah, something not quite right there, Finn. I did not know what happened in terms of our preparation for that game, because we knew that Freo were going to bring it.
Well, I mean, I don't know whether you saw Nick's presser, but he literally said we knew that they were going to come out strong. So I don't know how you cannot prepare yourself, and how the coach cannot get you up for an Anzac Day showcase game away that is winnable, when as a non-Victorian side, you need to bag 3 or 4 away games to get yourself into the 8.
Yep.
It was a very winnable game against a team that we need to finish above of, and we don't turn up. We just don't turn up. I 100% agree with you with regards to the tackling. It was as if we'd forgotten how to do it. We couldn't seem to pin their arms at all. They were able to either break free of tackles or dispose of the ball whilst in a tackle very easily. But your comment about where's our handball game, if you go back to our first couple of games, don't forget we were actually transitioning the ball by foot.
Oh yeah, but there's releasing around stoppages.
Let me finish the point. Yeah, no. Over the last couple of weeks, I've noticed a change in stats, and the stats are up at the moment. They don't tell a huge story, but one thing that stands out to me over the last couple of weeks is our uncontested possessions have been under our 2025 average. So our average is 225. I think last week we were 30 or so under that. This week we had 194. So again, we're sort of 30 under that. teams have worked out, and Fremantle killed us outside the contest. They absolutely killed us. They're getting that first give out of contested possession, and they were just away. Teams have worked out that they've got to be in our faces outside of the contest and not allow us to get that overlap run. And when you consider that we are in the 8 by virtue of a good percentage on the back of a couple of really good scoring games, and even against Gold Coast, it was a high-scoring game. But now, in the last couple of weeks, given GWS was a shitty game, but to score 9 goals on a fast deck against Fremantle, and our inside 50s, what do we have inside 50s? Our inside 50s, 42 for the match. You're not going to kick a winning score with 42 inside 50s. Just not going to happen. And I think we were only like our inside 50 count was so low, and the quality of our inside 50s was horrific. So that tells me again that the midfield's not working hard enough, because we are not transitioning the ball. We are slow. We are predictable. The ball is in the wrong hands often, which is why we're seeing turnovers by blokes like Murray and, bloody Riley O'Brien and people like that, who shouldn't be anywhere near our transition. And I just don't think the midfield works hard enough.
Probably fair.
So, I don't know, mate. Something's gone on with our chat, unfortunately. That's stopped relaying. But anyway, we've been. It gives me the impression that they trained this ball movement pattern during the pre-season, thinking that opposition teams weren't going to look at it and go, "Oh, that's the way they're moving the ball." And we've had no answer. And when we've actually been asked to transition the ball under pressure, we're not able to do it. And that's because, and I've said this for a few years, we don't work hard enough.
We don't, but also composure. Like, there was just the lack of composure, and players that were failing to, switch the play or get it out of congestion or get it out of sticky situations by hand, and just make that one right decision that sort of gives you breathing room. We just rarely did it. We just kept putting ourselves under more and more pressure, and our boys did not like it that they were up in our faces and putting the heat on. And that's, whether that's a training thing or personnel, like players that just can't handle that heat, that's what you're going to get in finals, So not that, who knows if we're going to play finals, but if you want to play finals, you're going to have to, the best teams, like I know Geelong did win today, but they've got some players that can absorb and handle that pressure and make the right decisions at the right time, and we crumbled under that.
Well, that's the thing. We don't have enough players that you can rely on, big man, at the moment. And unfortunately, the blokes that we've drafted along the journey have not been given enough opportunities to cement themselves as AFL players or expose themselves as not good enough. Because they've been in and out of the side, they've been used out of position, they've been used as stopgaps, and they're languishing in the twos now.
I know you're a Berry fan, so and I agree that he has some qualities to his game, but you don't think he's been given enough opportunity? Because I reckon he's had a fair run at it, and he's shown enough deficiencies to question his spot in the side. Do you think that he's better than what he's offered?
I think he had a really good patch of form before Matt Crouch came back in. From memory, I think Matt Crouch came back in off a Berry injury back in 2023 or whenever it was. And our run in 2023 was built off the first half of the season when we had young lads, Rochelle running through the midfield, Berry running through the midfield, Schomburg, and we actually stagnated in the back half of 2023 when blokes like Rory Sloane and Matty Crouch and all those blokes were pumped back into the midfield. And I think since then he's had little runs, little bursts, but the problem is, and we've done this to a few players. I think we did this to Lockie Gallant. Whether he was up to it or not, it's not the point. When you get selected and you're not given an opportunity to have a run at it, find some form, get your legs at AFL level, all the rest of it, and show what you can do, you're playing for your life all the time. And that's not how you build a career. You build a career by the coach and the team showing faith in you and saying to you, all right, you're the bloke that we're going to play in this position, and we're going to back you in. Like we did with Braden Cook last year for probably longer than we should have. We gave Braden Cook every opportunity to show that he was an AFL player, and in the end, it showed that he wasn't. Right? So we haven't done that with Dowling. We haven't done that with Berry. I would argue we haven't done that with Pedler. I don't even think we've done it with Rash, because we don't give Rash any centre bounces at all anymore, and yet he's a clearance machine. Whenever he's in there, the stats show you his ratio of clearances to centre bounce attendances is off the charts. Berry can kick you a goal. Matty Crouch doesn't do that. Matty Crouch has got one string to his bow, and I would rather miss the finals and know whether Sam Berry's going to make it, Harry Schonberg's going to make it, Billy Dowling's going to make it, Luke Pedler's going to make it. I'd rather know. Let's answer those questions, because until I don't think we can safely answer those questions right now, because we're still relying on Crouch, Dawson out of position, Laird in the back half. Rank. I think no one's teaching Rankin how to be a midfielder. So he's got deficiencies. He's fantastic. Don't worry, I'm a Rankin fan like everyone else. But there are defensive issues with Ranks at stoppage that make us vulnerable, because his player will often get off the chain because Ranks ball watches.
I think sometimes though, like sometimes, like whether it's SANFL footy or the amount they play at AFL level or training or just being around the club for years now, sometimes if a player's got what it takes. Like, look, I like Sam. I think he's got some traits that are AFL quality, but also he's got some traits that aren't. His kicking isn't great. I think we need more skilled players in the team. We need more skilled players in the team, not less. I like the fact that he can take
worse
mark.
Than Matty Crouches?
It's Come on, mate. Matty's is more reliable, but that's about it. They're both not damaging.
Yeah, because it only goes 10 metres and it goes backwards.
Look, even high draft picks, like a Will Phillips or a Jai Clark who played today. Like, I was watching him a bit of that game, and I thought to myself, like, this guy was a made for AFL player, pick 8 or so in that 2022 draft. He's probably not going to make it. Like, he probably just doesn't have what it takes to step up to the next level. But sometimes players just don't quite develop that extra level that you need to be an AFL quality player. And maybe we have too many of those in our list that are stuck in between that unfortunate zone of too good for SANFL, not good enough for AFL. And Berry might be one of those. I'm all for giving players more opportunity and backing them in for an extended period, like we are with Curtin right now. But I think you need to do it with the right players as well. If you think like the coaching staff and the development staff, they think this guy's probably not AFL quality, then don't give them that block when you should be giving it to someone else. Do you know what I mean? Identify the players that you think are AFL standard and run with them.
Well, that's reasonable. I don't have any problem with that. What I would come back to is that we were starting to do that at the beginning of the 2023 season, and when we got ourselves into a position where, oh shit, we're actually winning some games and we could make finals here, we reverted back to Sloan and Crouch. And that's the problem that I have. We got Patrick in the chat that wants to have something to say. Patrick, I've given you the green light. How you going, mate?
Self, boys?
Very good.
I just wanted to bring something up. I was actually fortunate enough to be at the game against Freo. I was in Perth for work, but not ideal. But just watching it live, and I also saw the Geelong game live. I think Fiends kind of summed it up perfectly, is that we've gone full circle, and at the end of the day, this all starts with a midfield that's kind of relied upon a boys' club that we've installed, and it's still there, let's be honest, and playing players in there that aren't midfielders. Like you look at Port Adelaide, for example, Connor Rozee, I probably would say he's a much better player than Dawson, just of skill and attributes and really what he could be. And he's voluntarily gone to the back lines, you know. And we've seen how that's worked on him. And as a leader, our defense is a young back line. Seeing Geordie going down there and like who better to guard the defense, who to go where and really set up play than him, you know, as opposed to a lad who's just gonna, you know, try to get a handball receive, or even Miller himself. He doesn't really set up play, and with Hinge out this week as well, I'm very, very worried about a transition, specifically with how it's changed with Nick's new defensive philosophy, which is what I realised against Freo is he mentioned his presser about changing how we defend. What he does is just floods the back line. Everyone runs up the ground. Then once we get the ball, players just have to go full sprint up the ground, which again, full game at footy, that's not going to move the ball. We were relying upon hitting blokes on the lead, changing the angles, handball chains, but it's very lazy and inept coaching, in my opinion. Yeah, probably a bit there, but yeah, thoughts on that?
Big man.
Oh,
no, I'm happy with the comments. So you go right ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, like you said a lot what you said. Like, I think I agree that Dawson halfback, particularly with Hinge out this week. I forgot about that. That's a joke too, just quietly. But anyway, with Hinge out this week, I think Dawson would have to go back. I say that, but I don't think we'll do it. We'll probably bring Brody Smith or something back in there. Yeah, I think not only just with Hinge, even with Hinge in the team, I think that Dawson would give us some more composure back there, because we are so rattled back there, whether it's in deep defense, you know, defending high balls or trying to clear it out of defense when the opposition's sweating on us. There's really a lack of trust in our teammates, and we're making really poor decisions coming out of defense. And I agree too that, you know, like as much as I don't think Miller has been in bad form, but I also think he's been I wouldn't say he's been precise with his kick and all that, but he's also not really taken meterage by you know, with his legs. He's not driving his legs.
Anyone, is he?
No, he's just kicking. You know, he's hitting targets 20 meters laterally and stuff. Like it's neat, but it's not damaging. We're not having guys that are really taking ground and running the lines out of defense. So we're really just kicking to the next contest a lot of the time if we can't see a short target, and it's really drying up that ball movement. I feel like we've got players in our team that would really, you know, be complemented by that run and gun style of play, but we're not playing that at the moment, and that's partly because we're not handling the pressure, the extra pressure teams are putting on us, and obviously they're hunting us now because they know that we're actually hard to, you know, we're a half decent team, and they're really coming to play against us now. We're not the easy beats anymore. But our boys aren't adjusting to that, and they're going back to the shell, and they're playing some pretty ordinary footy. And like you said, like it's something needs to change. Whether it's the instructions the coaches are giving them, or the players themselves have to put on themselves to be more creative and more dynamic, rather than this floppy play that's getting us nowhere. You know, we somehow managed to kick 67 points on the weekend from 40 entries. Like that's only because we've got some pretty good players up forward. Otherwise, most teams wouldn't be able to do that. But we can't. That's not something you can sustain and win games footy. So, no, I agree. The mix-up needs to change, and that probably needs to start with Dawson going back in defence.
Well, and I think
I pose this idea.
Go on, Patrick.
Thanks, mate. Personally, watching Mike Laney and the amount of highlights you've seen him running, dashing, and hitting Tex on the lead, like a 50-meter kick dart hits him. Why can't him and Dawson be a halfback pairing? Like they both are, I would say, very good interceptors, and they both we know can start play. And then, you know, it opens the idea of if you want Laird to really be a defensive back pocket out of the team, and Hugh Bond has a perfect spot in the team. Like I think. I'll probably sound a bit biased here, but I think we have the makeups if you have a few positional changes and
I agree.
a bit of integrity in the selection that we could I mean, it starts in the midfield. I watched James Peatling live, and you did the stat last year with Pedler and how much return you get, like bang for buck. Peatling's this year's the same. Like every 4 CBAs he gets a centre clearance, and
Yep.
he gives what Crouch gives in terms of he's a hard nut and he'll put his head on the line. But guess what? He will run the other way. He'll hit a target. He'll create, and you bring him in for 4 years, make it worth it for him. Like Cumming as well. He's a classy player. I swear every kick inside 50 he does hits a target. Like these are the kind of players you gotta get involved in the game. Even Keys, he did in the last quarter, but I know he's not the cleanest ball user, but at the end of the day, he wins it. He's quick and he's a hard nut. And I would rather him in there than Crouch, because at least if you get him going, like you get people in the mid, you get them going and firing. Rochelle as well, sitting in the forward line waiting for a kick inside 50, but all they're doing is just bombing it on Phil Thorpe's head and praying that, one hand he can grab it. I genuinely believe that we can be a top 4 team. Not with this coaching stuff, though. I think if you had a Craig McRae coaching this team, very different side.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting to bring up Max too, because. Sorry, I was going to say
with you, Patch. Sorry, go on, big man.
Oh no, just quickly. I was just saying that it's interesting to bring up Max. Like the reason we can't play him as a high half back is because we want him to play as on the best opposition small defender. So we need to bring in a player that can lock down a small defender. If we're not going to use Hugh Bond as a tagger, then play him as that and free up Max a bit and see how that looks. Because I agree he's someone that he's not an amazing kick Max, but he is quick and he is a dasher, and we don't really have that in the back line right now. I think that's something that we could definitely look at.
See, that's another example of us using a player out of position to cater for another player. Now, Rory Laird should be that lockdown player on the small, but because he's not capable of doing it, we have to sacrifice Max, who can be quite attacking and get you lots of metres and really split open a defence on transition. But we have to use him as a lockdown type. We have, imagine having a half-back line of Dawson and Michael Annie with a bit of hinge thrown in there and rotating the 3 of them through a wing as well and getting some of that delivery into forward 50. I mean, all of a sudden, we're a far more potent side. And to me, it has always been about selection integrity. It has always been about playing the wrong people and not trusting our young players. And I don't think he's going to change. And I'm with you, Patrick. There are certain players that you play for a while, like Braden Cook. I think we've seen enough of Braden to understand what we're going to get from him. We know what we're going to get from Crouch. We know what we're going to get from Lachlan Murphy. Well, I think we know what we're going to get from Matthew Nix. I think the jury's in. I don't think there's any more. I don't think there's any more that we can get out of Nixie. He has shown us the type of coach that he is, and in my opinion, he's not the appropriate coach.
100%.
Thanks, Patrick. Nice to have you come on, mate, and I'll drop you back to the crowd. If anyone else wants to come on and have your say, then Patrick set a fairly high bar, but feel free. Mate,
that's good.
I don't want to labour the point, but like I said, I'm probably there's just sometimes I lose the will to do this podcast because it seems like we're just talking about the same things ad infinitum.
9 circles.
And there doesn't seem to be any progression. And to be sitting here talking about Matt Crouch and Rory Laird, it blows my mind, because I remember when these young lads came into the squad, Shuey and Berry and blokes like that, Luke Pedler, and yes, they've had injury problems, they've had form problems. I get all of that. I understand all of that, but they were so intent on making the club their own. It was the theme that I got because I interviewed all those lads, and the common theme was that they were keen to be the next generation. And here we are 3 or 4 years later, and they're not. They're still bit players. And that's because we've still got a core of senior players that won't bugger off by themselves. Let's face it, Rory Sloane would still be playing if he didn't have his eye injury. And we don't have a coaching staff that are strong enough to make calls on these blokes' careers.
Yes, and I think, Brodie's just another great example. Like, I love Brodie. I think Brodie's been one of my favourite players that play for the club in the last 15 years. He decided to stick around for another year. He got that trick in his contract, and that was a ridiculous situation as it was.
Yep.
But he decided to stick around when he probably should have stepped away, and that's our fault for giving him the option in the first place. That's what we did. So
he's going to take it if he's given the option, isn't he? Of course.
Well, he is, but to me, as much as I think we've got a pretty good group of players and everything like that, I can't question too many of our guys on our list in terms of their approach and their professionalism. I look at a couple of these guys, and you're right about Sloaney. He probably would have gone on, or at least he would have definitely tried to play out the entire year. And I think myself, I'd love to see some of these guys say, you know what, someone else take my spot, And even Smithy's saying, you know what, maybe I'll stick around and do a coaching or development thing. I'll get my money that way, but I won't. I'll free up a spot in the draft. This is a big draft for the club, so they can get other pick.
Sorry to interrupt you on that, but the comment Brodie was commentating on 5AA during the Freo game, and they were talking about Charlie Edwards, and Brodie was saying how well Charlie's playing off half back, and his final comment was, "But I hope I'm still ahead of him," and that shows you the mentality.
Because football players are competitive, and they want to they're, as much as they're for the team, they're also self-serving because they want to be the best they can be. But at some stage, I'd love to see some of our boys to say, you know what, actually, I'll let this guy take the lead now. And I think that it sounds ridiculous because we haven't played finals in about 8 years now. We might need to do another little mini rebuild, which sounds
no doubt.
Yeah, it sounds ridiculous, but that's just how it is because we've got players who are 30 plus.
I've got no doubt.
This is probably Texas last year. We'll have to wait and see on that, but it probably is, and probably should be. As much as I love Tex, I think he's playing pretty decent footy. Lairdy, I don't know if he's out of contract this year or next year, but that'll be an interesting one to see what they do there. Brodie's out of contract, so we know he's gone. But it's just there's a few guys there. I'm like, they're still in the 22. Like Lairdy's still in the 18s. Tex is still, our centre forward, and these guys need to be replaced. And there's a couple of others too that, Matt Crouch is another one, where it's like, we probably needed to rejuvenate the list again through the draft a little bit. And we hopefully we don't run into a problem where, then suddenly Dawson and Keys and et cetera suddenly are in the twilight of their careers and we haven't maximised their careers and we have to do it all over again. So, and I think that sort of follows on from the issue you raised, is that we probably haven't handed over the keys to enough of the younger players to take this club forward. We're still a bit conservative with our list management and our team selection. I think it's definitely been better this year than it was last year. Like last year infuriated me, Fiend. The amount of times last year I was calling for Dowling, Mankervis, et cetera, to get games, and Taylor and such. Like at least we're playing those players this year. But we're probably not trusting them in the roles that they like. Taylor doesn't play midfield for us. He's a
midfielder, but he doesn't play for us. Big man Zach Taylor should, and we need to expose Zach to that and to see whether he can overcome his stature, because he is a small player. He's got great composure in tight. Great composure in tight. It's got a nice little step. Let's see it, right?
We're too afraid to think.
You can't play him in a bloody half-forward. That's the point that I've been making about this side and about Matthew Nix's selection philosophy for the last 4 years. That we pick these blokes, and we've Justin Reid has done a very good job with trading to rebalance the age profile of our list, right? We've done away with that real big dip that we had in the 23 to 26 year age group by bringing in Peatling and Cumming and those blokes. My question is this. Why go, like there were 7 clubs going for James Peatling.
Yep.
We managed to get him over. Why is he not a first string midfielder? Why are we starting him on a half forward flank? Why is he getting 30% CBAs? Why? He's a genuine bona fide midfielder. We recruited him exactly for that situation, for that role.
Okay.
And we're not playing him there.
Yeah, so he had less than 50 again on the weekend.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's with Crouch being subbed off too.
James Peatling,
yeah, he had 10.
CBAs.
So less than Crouch, even though Crouch got subbed off.
That's right, 42% CBAs.
Yeah, Dawson the most, which we've been talking about. So, yeah, look, I agree. And look, I know, we weren't talking like this 4 weeks ago. We were talking about how good this is and this is. So it does change quickly. And as much as, I know that it's a cliche saying, but it's never as bad as and never as good as it seems. So there are players that just had a bad night. You know, sometimes you just have a bad night. It feels like we've had a few bad nights lately. But, you know, I think there's an element where you got to be like, okay, just wait and see, and then maybe judge. But I agree that there's been issues that they're not just come around suddenly around the corner. They've been lingering for years now,
yeah.
And we haven't addressed them, and we continue not to, and it's going to create problems going forward. Play players in their right positions, and you'll be surprised how much better you look.
I think. You know, we were quite bullish after the first couple of rounds. I think we did temper it with, you know, St Kilda were undermanned and, you know, Essendon were undermanned, a couple of key outs. Pardon me. You know, and then I think we were buoyed by a pretty good performance against Gold Coast up there. But you see very quickly when the season starts to settle in, blokes start to carry a few niggles, and not only that, teams start to have a look at some tape and say, all right, that's how Adelaide wants to play. This is how we need to counter them. Like the Gold Coast game was a straight head-to-head contest, basically. There wasn't a lot of countering. It was just basically two sides going at it, and it was a fairly high-scoring game, and, you know, it was pretty even. But then that's not how the season is going to be played, you know, and, you know, we saw against Fremantle, and we'll see it more often. You know, even the North Melbourne game, I think that flattered us a bit because I think North probably lost it by not being able to maintain possession of the ball for long enough to hurt us.
They can't defend North.
No, that's right. So, and they just cough it up too much. Yeah, you know, and you're right. We're still 4 and 3. We're 5th on the ladder and all that sort of stuff. You know, fantastic. But the warning signs are there. We're going to have, you know, Darcy may not be back for the Carlton game. Thilthorpe might be out, should be out for the Carlton game. We haven't managed Tex, and he looks like he's like in need of a break, but now we can't give him a break.
Yep.
Yeah, Dan Curtin was somewhat disappointing, I felt. His attack on the ball was
he needs to just get a bit more. Needs to get a bit more aggressive. He's playing like a player doesn't want physical contact enough.
He certainly did against Fremantle, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the simple fact of the matter is that we got absolutely towed up in the midfield. I've noticed that our rotations are favouring Dawson, Crouch and Saligo more and more each week, and people are saying, oh, Saligo's not playing that well. The poor buggers, he's the only one that's running defensively.
Yep.
It's little wonder he's gassed. He's the only one that's two-way running.
He was their best player in the first quarter or half, and then he
absolutely
died
he
out.
had a big first quarter and then eventually died out. He was still our second highest rated player on the ground.
Yeah.
You know, behind Josh Worrell, who I thought was our best easily. But when you've got a bloke that's running his guts out and running both ways, and he's a young lad. Why are we relying on a young lad in only his second full season of running through the midfield to be our mainstay? Why are we picking senior players and then expecting him to be the man?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Saliga, like, and I love Solly, but like Zach Taylor was the same draft, and he can't sniff a CBA. Like,
that's right.
You can't put him in there as well to help out. Like, he's just as natural a midfielder as Saliga.
Yeah. So. Peatling is a very hard worker. And then the other one that I don't understand is Sid Draper. Here you've got a kid.
Yeah.
Here you've got a kid who has got elite speed. His second efforts, I've observed by watching the Angeroon this year, are elite. He's never not in the contest. Until the ball's left the area, he's always a threat. And he's our first round draft pick, our number 4 or whatever the hell it was. Freaking play him. And if he's gassed by 3/4 time, then sub him out for someone else. Don't leave him sitting on the bench for 3/4 and then bring him on cold and expect him to bloody knock up 10 posies.
I thought he looked like a player that needed an SANFL game prior to the Freo game, like as in like going to that game, they kept him in the team as sub, which then ended up playing with SANFL anyway, and he would have got a lot of confidence from today in the SANFL just from playing midfield and getting a lot of the ball. Like, don't get me wrong, those stats look good. He didn't play as well as the stats would suggest. He was a bit rushed and everything with his possessions, but the fact is he got a lot of the pill. And he got tough pill, he got clearances, contested possession. Like, that's a step up for him for what he's done this year already. And that's as an 18-year-old still playing SANFL footy, senior footy, in a loss too. So, like, he should get confidence in that. The problem is he comes back in the if we put him in the AFL team, and if you start in the AFL team, I'm still not convinced he's going to be playing midfield again, even though he played it this week. Like,
no,
that's
play him at half forward.
Part. Yeah, and he'll play the graveyard role. He'll get 7 touches and get subbed off, or get subbed on and get 3 touches and play half a quarter. So, I agree with the handling of him in the first couple of rounds, because he wasn't. I wouldn't say he was completely underdone, but he wasn't as prepared as the other players in the team. But he's at a point now where it's either like, let's start trusting him in his actual role. Like, he is a out-and-out midfielder. Do you know what I mean? He's not like a small forward that can pinch in the midfield or vice versa. He's a clearance beast. He's a midfielder. Play him there, or keep playing, or play more in the SANFL and find a way for him to play midfield in the AFL when he comes back in. Don't play this halfway house sort of role he's playing right now, because it's not good for him, and it's not really helping the team either. It's not like we're getting heaps out of him at the moment.
Yeah, I'd rather, again, you've got to give the bloke some you've got to give the bloke some confidence by playing him in there, and if he gets gassed, then shift into a half forward flank or sub him out or whatever. He is a genuine bona fide midfielder. Genuine midfielder. And we don't have many. Our midfield, as I said at the top of the show, Dawson, who's a makeshift midfielder, Crouch, who's past it, Isaac, who's still learning the craft, and I hope someone's actually teaching him. Peatling's the second string rotation for some reason. Zach Taylor's not getting a look in. Sid Draper's not getting a look in. We're not picking to, like, I hear what people, I'm a fan of Berries, but I hear what people say about Berry, and that's fine. I'm prepared to meet people halfway on that. I just feel like if I want a grunt midfielder, I'd rather go with Sam Berry at the moment than Matt Crouch, because at least Sam Berry will run through a contest. At least he will get the ball forward. His disposal can be a little bit dodgy. Sometimes he's a little bit fumbly, but we're not getting anything out of Matt Crouch.
Yeah.
So, if we continue to play Matt Crouch, we're still not going to get anything out of Matt Crouch. So you play Sam, and you say do your best. You play Harry. You play Dowling. You play these blokes, and if at the end of the season you don't think they're up to it after a good run of games, trade or delist.
Yeah.
You know, go for something else. But you can't just have them wallowing in the twos for 3, 4, 5 seasons, you know, with spurts of games where they're playing for their lives or playing out of position. Like, how many times have we played Berry in the forward line, for God's sakes? He's not he can kick a goal, but he's not a bloody forward. He's a midfielder. So we've burnt too many players by not handling them and developing them properly. And
yeah,
you know, meanwhile, I'm still sitting here talking about Matt Crouch and Rory Laird, and I've had enough of it. Like, it's ridiculous.
You think we should do a Jack McRae-esque sort of situation with Matt at the end of the year, because he had a contract at the end of the year? Do you think it's in both parties' best interest if he finds a new home?
Oh, no doubt.
Yep.
No doubt. I think we actually have to. We have to, as a club, and it'll be interesting to see whether Murray Davis, Neil Baum, you know, these blokes come in and have any sort of influence here. But I've said for a long, long time that until the team of 2017 is no longer any part of our squad, we will not win anything. I've said that. And, you know, Brodie Smith's been a great player for the club. The amount of times Brodie Smith has let the club down in key moments, you know, the amount of times Tex Walker hasn't shown up at key moments in key games. You know, Matt Crouch, Rory Laird, these blokes, we know, pardon me, we know what they deliver under pressure in key moments, and they were found wanting. And that was 8 years ago. 8 years ago. And we're still going to that well 8 years later. There's not many teams around that haven't made a final since 2017 that are still running around with the same core group.
Yeah. And this is one of the issues you get, Fiend, is like, as much as, you know, I'm sure Nixie's a great bloke, that might be part of the problem, because it's hard to say no and say goodbye to guys that are so close to the club when, you know, you got a guy like Nixie who is obviously close to these players. And that's the hard part of being a coach, is that, you know, as much as you got to be respected and liked to an extent by your players, you also got to have a bit of toughness and steel and almost a bit of, not arsehole about you, but, like, you know, you got to be feared almost a bit. And I don't think Nixie's feared by our senior players, because then they'll know he will back them in as much as he can.
The club sent Nixie on a Harvard leadership course in the off-season. And, you know, I don't know what you've done for work. I've been in leadership roles at work, and a lot of people listening would have as well. You can't be mates with your staff, right? You can be on good terms. You can have good rapport with your staff and all the rest of it, but you have to have the right amount of separation to make the hard decisions. And in a football club, you have to be able to say to blokes, look, we've formed a really good culture here, but hopefully part of that culture is that you'll understand that there are going to be times I make decisions that you're not going to like, and it's not personal, because the team and the club is bigger than the individual, and my job is to make sure that the club and the team succeeds. Now, if you can't have that conversation and maintain relationships and still have that conversation, then you're not a leader, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that it's almost like Nixie, and I'm hypothesizing here, and I don't know Nixie that, you know, personally, but that he maybe is someone that fears being disliked or hated by those around him. Like, you know, he doesn't want, you know, a Tex or a Brodie Smith or someone to have an issue with him going forward, you know, for the rest of his life.
Correct.
Because, you know, he's grown so close with these people. And, you know, for him to then say, no, actually, you're out, he probably fears, like, the reaction that we'll get from those people, because he's too close to them, you know. And that's the struggle of, you know, being a coach. You know, you're right, there's a fine line. I think there's maybe a little bit more humanity in a footy club, because footy clubs are insular, and there's so much involved there beyond just the business side of things. But I agree that there's still that line, and maybe Nixie hasn't got that quite right, because it would show in his selections and list management as well.
You know, we've only got one premiership coach to draw on in terms of pardon me, an analogy, but I would say to you that the 97 and 98 teams, not a lot of them are best mates with Blighty to this day. But I reckon everyone would respect the hell out of him, and everyone would gladly shake his hand every time they have a reunion. But they're not going around for barbecues. That's not... And Blight knew that, not his role. His role was to get the best out of them. That's his role. That's his job. And the thing that Matthew doesn't understand is that he is actually doing them a disservice by not getting the best out of them, or not getting the best out of the team. He's actually failing in his job by doing so. So, and I can bet you, like, as these blokes roll on through their lives after their careers are finished, not many of them are going to be best mates with Nixie, whether he's a good bloke or not. You know, Matthew Nix has paid a few $100,000 to do a job. And, initially, sure, there was some cultural issues and there was a bit of splintering in the group and all that sort of stuff, and he had to do a bit of work there, and that's fine. We also had Daniel Jackson. I don't know whether he's still around, but we had Daniel Jackson to help there as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, having got that in order post-COVID and all the rest of it, from probably 22 onwards, I would have been sitting down with a group and going, all right, well, we've got through that. And now our job is to climb back up the ladder. And my job is to guide you guys back up the ladder. And sometimes I'm going to make calls that you're not going to like. Simple as that.
I mean, like, you can, even a guy like, and I love the bloke. I think he was a great player for us. But, like, that Daniel Taylor is an example of how that sort of feeds into the ego or the psyche of the senior players, is that, you know, he thought he still had more footy to play. He was cooked, absolutely cooked at that day.
Absolute toast.
And he still thought he still, you know, got really angry when we decided to cut him, and he was really upset about that. And even though he, you know, to anyone else but him, he was clearly done. And he didn't get another contract from any other club, so we were clearly right on that front.
Yeah.
But you know, when you allow that sort of I said ego, and that's a strong word, but it sort of is. Like, if you allow that, there's a word for it. I can't remember exactly right now, but when a player feels like they sort of own the club in that way, they
it's a sense of entitlement, mate, is what it is.
Entitlement. That's exactly what. Sorry, I was trying to think of the word.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Like that is a problem, and it's been a problem for a while. And look, every club has culture issues. We probably, you know, we don't have as many off-field incidents as some clubs and everything like that, but we do have issues, and I think that's a big part of it with our senior group, and not just senior group, but also, you know, some players that are in that mid to late 20s group that probably think they deserve a spot in the team, and if they don't get it, they're upset about it. And you know, we heard about Brodie Smith last year, you know, when he was dropped to the SANFL, was going to get dropped, and then what happened there, and it's an issue, and I think that Nixie not being hard enough is a big problem with that. You know, and that's, you know, maybe that's not something you can change. Maybe that's just how he is, and that's probably another reason why we need to look at other avenues going forward.
I think that one of the reasons why that Brodie Smith dropping became such a big problem or a big issue was symptomatic of the issue at hand, because it said to me that Brodie felt like he was entitled to play best 22. There was no pressure on him prior to that to maintain his place in the side. And I think there's a few blokes running around that Tex would be like that, Laird would be like that, you know. And I think there's been others. And look, I've got a lot of empathy for the blokes that were at the club in 2015 and went through all that and, you know, picked themselves up off the ground and got to a granny in 2017. And, you know, we had a few misgivings about the ability of some blokes to play under pressure, and that was borne out in the 27 granny. I've got for blokes that went through that, I think
amazing. It was amazing what they did.
I think they've had an experience at a football club that not many other footballers would have had, and I think that has contributed to a certain culture, and it's probably unavoidable. I mean, how could you possibly countenance that sort of stuff happening? But I've maintained for a long time, since 2017, that until we clear out those blokes, for better or worse, Brodie Smith, a fantastic servant for the club. Lairdy stepped up into the midfield when we didn't have any midfielders. Tex has been an absolute champion, our best performed forward to date. These blokes have been standouts for Roy Sloane, fantastic. But there were blokes that came through that system during that era, and yes, there's only a few of them left, but they have such a standing and such a presence within our club, I believe, that they still have a big impact on the culture and just how things work at the club, if that makes sense. I think there's also some administrators that have been around since that time that have a big influence on how things work at the club. And I think it had a profound impact on our club. And I think until that is completely cleared out, for better or worse, we're going to struggle with getting back to being a real football club with real selection integrity, selection on merit, good solid game plans, playing people in the right spots, all that sort of gear, without the noise of these larger-than-life figures having such an impact over the culture of the club. That's my opinion.
And look, if a player was to listen to this and Phil agrees by that, I don't want to think that we don't, understand that, particularly those players that, as you mentioned, went through the Phil Walsh incident. There's so much that they did for the club, and a lot of clubs would have been absolutely wrecked by that. And for them to actually,
it's freaking horrific.
Or it's for them to almost use it as a driving force to make a grand final 2 years later.
Yeah.
And we had a good list, but we didn't have an amazing list by any means in 2017, and we maximised what we had, and unfortunately we just couldn't get the job done in the day. But there's also that element where it's it's still, there's still more to it than just the individual players. And, we've got these young players who have leadership qualities, and they're obviously incredibly close. We know about how close Sligo and Rochelle are and such. They're extroverted types as well. And we want these guys to be, the leaders that drive the club, the face of the club forward.
Correct.
But when you got guys that are on the older end who, as you said, is still so pivotal to the day-to-day culture of the club, it doesn't quite work. Those guys like Sligo and Rochelle still have to sort of put their heads down and wait their turn, for these guys. And it's just it's sort of a mismatch of that doesn't quite work. And I'd love to see those guys get more responsibility. And the only way to do that is for those guys who have such big standing, as you mentioned, to obviously step away. And that's not easy to do. Texas is on track for 40, 50 goals this year. Even though he looked pretty ordinary on the weekend, he's still capable of kicking bags of goals. It's, are you going to, if Tex kicks 50 goals this year, is that going to be easy to say, all right, Tex, you're done? What I mean? That it's going to be hard to do that, and that it's such a brutal environment. I think Brodie Smith, that's an easy one. He's out of contract and he's playing SANFL. But Tex, Rory Laird, these guys, Matt Crouch, these guys have been so intrinsic to the core of the footy club. That's going to be much harder to do. And that's not just Nixie, that's Justin Reid and the rest. But yeah, you're right. It just feels like there's we're sort of in this land between the 2017 group and the new age group, and we're sort of trying to have both slices of the pie, if that makes sense. And where look, maybe we're looking into it too much, but to me, it still feels like for us to go forward as a club, we need to bring those younger guys through and let them take the club forward now. Well,
we'll probably finish this little bit of the conversation and I'd like to finish it by saying there's a reason we have not made finals since 2017. That's 8 years. There's a reason, and at certain, like, we made a grand final in 2017, and then we absolutely fell apart with the same list, big man, with the same list, the same core group. Yes, we lost a couple of key blokes. Cameron and Eddie Betts dropped off, and Hugh Greenwood left, and but essentially those blokes should have been replaceable. But we just didn't drop down to 4th or 5th. We dropped to bloody 12th. And then it's been downhill since then. And it's not always been about the quality of the squad. And I feel like we will have trouble having those conversations with Laird, Crouch, etc., if they are still playing in their roles at the end of the season. And I honestly think that the time is now to realise that Fremantle game was a huge illustration of the fact that, and Nick's answered these questions himself. He took Crouch out of the midfield in the last quarter because he wanted to inject some speed. Well, what does that tell you? What does that tell you? That our midfield is too slow with Crouch in it.
Yeah, we know Nixie, is, let's just say, likes to contradict himself sometimes. He would say, how much Brody Smith's such an important part of our team going forward, and then he plays in the SANFL. He says outlandish things because he likes to. He's someone who clearly likes to want to say the right things to make himself and those players feel good about themselves. But his actions don't quite match his words, if you know what I mean.
I think he also parrots mantras at times. I don't think he's genuine in what he says, and I'm not saying that he's a bullshit artist, but I think there's a certain lack of genuine response from him when it comes to certain things. We knew that they were going to come out hard. Well, of course you did. Why didn't we? Why? Surely they expected us to come out hard too. Why wouldn't you? It's an AFL, it's a game of professional football, for God's sake. Yeah. So to say that as if, we knew they were going to come out hard and they just beat us at the contest, it's well, why, Matthew? Because we had just as much incentive to win as they did.
Absolutely.
So, to finish that up, I think my personal view is that the next 2 or 3 weeks are going to be pivotal if we don't make some wholesale changes to our selection. And I don't really care whether they bring in a bloke like Berry or whatever. I just want them to recognise that what they're doing at the moment is not working. And it won't work.
Yeah.
And we have to move on from it.
I think when I sort of half agree with the selection thing, I think that the names are right. It's just we're not playing them in the right positions or the right way. There's not many guys from that team in the weekend that would actually drop from the team, given what we've got. There's actually really not. I think maybe Matt Crouch would be one. Mark Keane is someone that clearly needs to get some confidence up and get his game back.
Yeah,
because now he's a liability back there. But I've been calling for Taylor to be in the team, but he's in the wrong spot. I've been calling for Nate to be in the team. Look, he wasn't great on the weekend. I admit that, even though I'm a bit of a fanboy. But I still think
he was played all over the ground as well. Nate.
Nate's a bit of a victim of his versatility. But I agree, we're still not playing exactly.
And let's not forget, he wasn't even selected 3 weeks ago, and now all of a sudden we're relying on him to be a swingman, for God's sakes.
Yeah, and I know people will talk about Curtin, where he should be playing. That's another one we need to figure out. I still maintain that for the time being, I don't mind the way we're using him, but it's also on him to perform as well. He can't just be coasting through games. He's been okay to this point, but it wasn't a great game from him the weekend. I think that's we were talking about Max before. I think Bonds was on I think we really need to look at. I think hopefully Draper gets a full run in the team. I'm guessing he's still got to stay in the team now that he's played well in the SANFL. We need to find someone to replace Hinge. It should be, if it was up to me, it'd be Dawson. If we're not going to use Dawson, then Swing coming back in defence, playing Nank on a wing. Whether we do that or not, I'm not sure. I will say Dowling was really poor today in the SANFL, so that's probably going to hurt his chances of getting in the team.
Got half a dozen touches or something.
Yeah,
that was very out of character.
He's a magnet, so that it was very strange to see that. But yeah, look, I think most of the names are right, but I just don't think we're maximising what we've got, and not only just the way we play, but also where we're playing some of these players as well. So unless we do some things going forward, it just feels a bit stale at the moment.
I would like to see Charlie Edwards come in for Hinge, whether they start him or whether they start him as a sub. I think.
Oh yeah.
Look, Charlie Edwards and what's the other lad's name? Ollie.
Oscar Ryan.
Oscar Ryan. They've been on our list now for what, 2 years?
One and a bit, yeah. So they're still in the second year, but
not even mentioned in dispatches so far.
No. Oh, you wouldn't know about it you wouldn't know they exist unless you looked into it.
No. And, Charlie was a second-round draft pick. It's not as if he was some pick 50.
He was a first.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he was. It was a late first.
Both, actually. Both were late first, yeah.
So, we picked them with the intent that they were going to be part of our future. Now, what are we doing with them? So I would like to see Charlie Edwards come in.
Yeah. Oh, we definitely have a bide your time mantra, in terms of blooding youth. That's been an issue for a while now.
Selectively. Max
yeah, unless you're like a really...
How many games of twos has Max played?
It's funny, isn't it, how that works out? And look, I understand different players develop at different rates, but we definitely have less of an inclination to try things out with new players than some other clubs. We seem to wait until they're absolutely ready. And look, to be fair, like the Geelong model is very similar. If anything, they're even more conservative than us. Like an Ollie Dempsey only just started getting games last year after being on the list for a couple of years before that.
Yeah.
I think we're also in a position where we need to be blooding youth as much as possible. We don't have as much of a senior core. We're still essentially I don't want to call us a rebuilding team, but certainly a team that's still on the younger side of things. We need to be getting games into these guys. Otherwise, what's the point?
Well, and again, it's a very simplistic thing to say, but are blokes like Matt Crouch, Rory Laird, Tex Walker, are they in our next premiership side? I don't know whether they are. I'm sure they're not, to be honest with you. So why are we putting games into bloke like the selection of Lockie Murphy to me was horrific earlier in the season and a real red flag. And the fact that Lockie Murphy is playing midfield in the twos, to me, is a real red flag. Why? There's absolutely no reason to play Lockie Murphy in the middle in the twos. No reason whatsoever. Because we're not trying to win an SANFL flag. We're trying to develop our next generation of players. Why are we playing Lockie Murphy in the middle? Don't make any sense to me.
Well, we also play, and look, don't get me wrong, he's a great top up, but we played Jay Ball in the middle too, and he's not even on our list.
Yeah, I know.
So, that's another bloody kettle of fish to talk about. But I do agree. I think that there is such thing as going too young, but I think we've got enough sort of like 25 to 30-year-old players through, adding a few guys in the trade period last year where we can
definitely.
We can trust a bit more youth to come through, and we could probably use a bit of a freshen up in terms. We saw how much the energy of Draper gave us in the first couple of games.
100%.
I think it's really important to keep, when deserved. I don't agree on just chucking games for the sake of it, but because you don't want to expose a kid and make him feel like absolute crap. Because we've seen that this year. Jack Whitlock, he's going to be a really good player for North, but they chucked him in the deep end and he got subbed in his first game and he's back in the VFL, and he's probably way down in confidence than he was, even a month ago. Yeah. So you got to be careful with that. But Oscar Ryan was ready last year. Like if anything, he's probably
he was ready last year.
He was probably regressed, and maybe that's partly because he's thinking to himself, when am I going to get a game? I couldn't get it last year when I was tearing it up.
And this is the next danger, that you're going to lose blokes in that mid tier because they're going to want opportunities elsewhere. And for some of them, it could be the end of their career. They'll never get a look in. For others, there'll be teams that might have been watching them and think, oh yeah, he's a chance for a late pick or for a delisted free agent pick or whatever.
Yeah.
But it does such incredible damage to a young lad when their first 2 or 3 seasons they don't get a look in, or they get used sparingly out of position with the threat of death over them. If they mess up, that's not how you develop football.
Subvests.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate the sub for that reason too.
Oh, I think it's terrible. The worst thing. It's contrived rubbish.
Sam Berry, he comes on the sub last week and then plays a quarter, only gets a few touches. Admittedly, didn't have a great quarter, but it's hard to to come in a game and dominate when you got to get the flow of things. And he's back out playing SANFL the next week. He'd be thinking, what am I expected to do?
I'm just going to address Ragnar in the chat, who says, why would you start playing bad in the twos because you are in the ones? Well, if you've been playing well in the twos for 2 seasons or a season and a half and not getting selected, and then you see blokes like Lockie Murphy get selected, or blokes like Matt Crouch have shit games and remain in the team, then I'm sorry, but any human being would drop their bundle a little bit, Ragnar. That's just human nature.
Yeah, I mean, and they also know there's a hierarchy to selection. That if there's senior players in the SANFL team alongside them, they're their chance to get a game before they do, even though they might, the younger player might be playing the better footy.
Correct.
We love to think that all our players are 100% locked in every game. They're going to play as best as they can, and but the mind is a powerful thing, and motivation is such an important part of footy, and confidence that comes from that, from being backed in by your coaches. And if you feel like you can turn up and get 35 touches and 3 goals and still not even make the emergencies of the AFL team, then you're probably how can that not impact on your motivation to go out there and play as well as you can? Because there's not that. Even just having that carrot dangling in front of you is an important thing, and we don't really tend to give that. Yeah. So look, I agree. I'd love for our players to turn up every week in the SANFL and give 100% and play the best they can, but it doesn't quite work like that. We all know how it works, and that's an important part of the selection committee, to make those fringe younger types feel like they're a real chance every week. To make. Not to bullshit them and say, oh, you're real close this week. It's not like that, but to be like, do this, do that, and we're really going to back you in. If you can meet this criteria. I'm not convinced we're really selling that to our young, those guys like Edwards and Ryan at the moment.
Well, I think we've actually gaslit some of our younger players by having them, they'll bob up on an emergency list, and it's almost like we had to put you on an emergency list because you've been playing well lately and we want to keep you interested, but they've no intention of picking them. Dowling's been the victim of that a little bit over the course of his time with us, and I think that's no way to. I think we're very, very bad at developing what's the word? Evolving our list. I think we're very bad at it. We don't. Yeah. You see other teams, and they either drop their senior players or they move them to other roles, like the classic with Luke Hodge going to half back, and blokes like that, give them different roles. Or you see with Hawthorn, Hawthorn premiership players, Lewis and Mitchell. Sorry, boys, you're no longer part of our plans. We've loved what you've given us, but go and find another team to play for. I mean. You've got to be able to have those conversations with players, and players have to be big enough, and let's face it, love the club enough to go, yeah, you know what, you're right, it's time. And I feel like we've laboured this point a fair bit, and it seems at some level, it seems like a bit of an overreaction to one loss when we're still 4-3 and fifth on the ladder. But it just seemed to me like we have slowly but surely regressed back to where we've always been. I found it an incredibly deflating watch, that 2 hours against Fremantle, big man.
I think we all did, Finn. Yeah. Look, and I want to add the caveat that I'm not for handing games to kids for the sake of it. And, I think that it's important that the player, like the player themselves, Charlie Edwards or Oscar Ryan, that they're actually ready to go, because that's so important. Don't chuck them in the deep end for no reason and kill their confidence, because that's worse than not playing them.
Of course.
So,
but when they're ready, play them.
No, and I think that one thing, if we have been good at one thing, it's that generally our kids have been ready to go when they play AFL. But the problem is that they had been ready to go for a little before that too. Do you know what I mean? Like when we play, and we're like, oh yeah, these guys, they're good. They're up to the level. It's like, yeah, they're up to the level 2 months ago. We just didn't play them until then.
Well, Dowling was bashing the door down last year. We've had, we went through a stage last year where the only time blokes were getting a look in was via injuries.
Josh Wallace though,
the same. 100%, 100%.
Yep, it was the same. He only got it through injuries. Nate Curvis made his debut as a late emergency. And we're like, oh, this guy's actually can play footy. Like Zach Taylor, I think was a late in as well. So there's just we're typically quite reluctant to do it, as aside from a couple of exceptions, as you mentioned.
Yeah. All right. Just quickly, a couple of players that I wanted to mention. I thought Worrell, speaking of Josh, was pretty good. 20 touches, 5 marks, 8 contested possessions, 9 intercepts, 5 score involvements, 332 metres gained. He was a real standout in our defence. And he's got such value as that third tall intercept marker who can also lock down a little bit as well. And let's not forget he's only 40, 50 games into his career. But really coming on well, Josh, and becoming like a reliable component of our defence.
Yeah, and was obviously Murray a bit hindered, and Keeney having a shocker really. We need someone to step up back there, and he did. Like, he's not infallible as a defender, because he's not the biggest, strongest guy going around, but he works with what he's got, and he brings so much with his offensive side of the game. He's got a bit of dash about him. He takes the game on. He's one who does actually drive his legs a bit. And I thought he really fought hard. He got pinged for that ridiculous tackle. I can't believe he got fined for that too, Fern. Like,
oh no, that
shouldn't
ridiculous.
have been a free, and then we got a fine for it. That's like, that's just the AFL saying, trying to protect the umpires. So I know you got it right. It's a correct decision. Here's a fine. It wasn't a dangerous tackle. We've been screwed over a few with those actually on boundary lines.
Say the umpiring was bloody mystifying. Ended up being +1 us, but
but
for a large portion of the game, it was
good on them. Like, it almost felt like they intentionally gave us like a bunch of free kicks in the last quarter just to make it look better, because it was not trending that way. I can tell you that much. Anyway, umpires weren't the biggest issue with that game. But I agree. Like, and look, Josh, still got things to work on. He's still a bit panicky when he's got a bit of frontal pressure deep in defence with his handballs and stuff. But he's definitely getting better. I think his competitiveness has improved so much in the last couple of years, and we need someone to step to actually step up back there, and he was one of the few that did. And I agree. I think he was probably our best, unless I'm forgetting someone. I think he was probably our best player on that night.
Yep. Yeah, love his passion too. Like, when I interviewed him a few weeks ago, and we talked a little bit about his white line fever and his passion, and for a Victorian lad to come over and be so ingrained in the club and passionate about wearing the jumper and all the rest of it, it's really good to see. A shout out to Jake Saligo. I thought, even though our midfield got pantsed, I felt particularly in the first half, he was by far and away our best midfielder. He ended up with 18 touches, 12 contested, 8 ground balls, 6 clearances, 331 metres gained, and 17 pressure acts. I really hope we don't burn this kid out, because he is carrying a big load at the moment in the midfield because of the lack of work rate of one or two others. And you just disappeared, big man. Hello? Hello? All right, so big man's just, I don't know what's going on with him. Oh, you can hear him, I can't. What's going on with that? I wonder why I can't hear you.
Is it hello?
There we are. I just
Can you
lost
hear
you
me now,
there
Finn?
for a minute. Yeah, that was weird.
I just left and rejoined because I could
Yeah,
hear you, but you couldn't hear me.
No, I can hear you.
No, I was just saying he had that look about him of a guy that is starting to hit a bit of a wall, which I hope is not the case because he started the year so well. But just the last couple of weeks, I think, geez, he looks so tired out there, and he partly because he's obviously one of the few that's working hard defensively. But you're right. I just hope we don't burn to a crisp because he's got weapons and he does things with in terms of taking the game on and his creativity through stoppage that we don't really have a lot of apart from maybe an Isaac Rankin.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he would be one I think that would benefit a lot from having James Peatling in as a first rotation mid.
Yeah.
Because James has a similar work rate. He also doesn't mind getting inside and getting the hard ball. He also stays in the contest and gives second efforts. And him and Solly would be a really good 1-2 punch in my opinion. But when you've got Solly in there with Ranks or Crouch or Dawson, a combination of those, there's not enough defensive work rate for Saligo, and he's only a kid still. It's his second real season as a midfielder. We shouldn't be relying on him for all that work. And 1990 in the chat, I agree with you 100%. We need to start rolling Rochelle through the midfield. I don't care if we run him through CBAs and then roll him forward. He is a clearance machine. He makes things happen. And him and Rankin, in my opinion, are the perfect foil for each other to just roll in and out of that in and out of that midfield rotation. And I don't know why we don't do it.
Probably a byproduct of playing Rankin so much in the guts is that they want that genuine smaller who can hit the goals down there. Look, to be fair, I'm not sure. Like for the Freo game, coming off the ribs, maybe it's best that we didn't play him in there. But going forward, I agree that it would be something to at least have a look at, because it's not like we're going gangbusters in the midfield right now. And also just on Saligo, he had groin issues last year. I just got to be so careful we don't let that flare up again. So I agree that
have the OP.
Yeah. So if we can give some time out in there, that'd be great.
Here's another question. Like Alex Neil-Bullen used to be a second or third rotation mid for Melbourne. Why haven't we seen him attend one centre bounce since he's been with us?
He's also a defensive mid too, because he was a big reason why Petrarca was such a dynamic midfielder and he could go forward of centre, because Neil-Bullen was doing a lot of the grunt work in there and helping out defensively. So that's another one we could look at, because obviously we're not playing Bond in the team at the moment. So if we're not going to play Bond, then at least give Neil-Bullen a look in there.
He says A and B too slow. Well, I'd like to see Matty Crouch beat him in a foot race, party.
He was a bit slow running to that open goal the other night, but
that was a shock. That was a shocker.
Yeah,
even running slow, like just the technique, like what?
Dunster would have had a fit.
Oh my god!
But look, again, I agree. Like, I really like his creativity with the ball. I still think it's easy to say I'll put him in the midfield, Like, he's playing a pretty good role at half forward for us right now. Like, He was
But
pretty
just one
he
or
was, he was
two
decent.
for a bit of a change up.
Yeah, like I don't mind the idea. I mean, is there such thing as there's you can play too tight at midfield, but can you play too loose in midfield and that you have too many numbers to run through there, and there's players don't feel settled throughout a game? Is there that risk too, though, Finn?
Maybe.
Where if I can, you think
I-
about chucking players back and forth and swingmen and stuff. Like I reckon, if you're playing a flight, you're running 8 midfielders through the centre bounce. Like at some point, they're probably going to find it hard to really feel like they're in control of the game as well.
I think it
Individually.
depends on how you train. If you train for it, I think it can be a real asset because it makes you very hard to match up on. If you categorise your midfielders as defensive or two-way runners or offensive, and we've probably got midfielders in each of those 3 categories. I think you can make it very difficult to match up if they all are on the same page and all are working together and understanding what their roles are. I don't think necessarily you need to have a 1-2 punch sort of thing, and I think that can actually make you a bit vulnerable at times. I think having the option of rolling someone else through as a bit of a change-up is a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, do you think we should also look at using Rob as the sub and only subbing him on after half time because he seems to play so much better in the second half than he does the first half? His first quarter, I love that tap he did straight to in the last 10, 20 seconds, and they cost us another red time goal when he hit it straight. It was a two-hand tap straight to the Freo player. And then it just, nice little goal at the end of the first quarter. That's an issue, isn't it?
You can't see my face right now.
It's an issue. Look, he fought back, but Rob always fights back because, as the Albridge and Ruckman get tired, he comes in his own because he's so much fitter than the majority of Ruckman out there. He tends to finish off games really well, but he tends to start off games really poorly as well, and it's costing us with these first quarters sometimes. McAndrew was good again today, Finn.
I'm just like, I think that O'Brien is another case of we know what we're going to get from him. And is that the type of ruckman that's going to take us forward? I don't think so. And look, there aren't many standout ruckmen in the competition, but you want a ruckman that'll break even for you and not cost you too much. I think the problem with O'Brien is, for all his work rate, he does things that actually cost you goals. Yeah. And that's the problem. He does things, as I've said before, he'll be in defence and he'll tap into the corridor, he'll do things like he did, like you mentioned, the double fister straight to the outside of the contest where the Freo guy was. Now, he clearly doesn't have any control over where he's tapping. He doesn't work in unison very often with our midfielders. Every now and again we'll run a play and he'll work it out, but he's not good when he's not in the right position to be able to do that sort of thing. He doesn't have a second option. He just taps wildly. And pardon me, I think we've seen enough. And I'd like to see Lockie McAndrew come through and see what he can do. I'd like to give him half a dozen games, not this 1 or 2, where O'Brien gets 500 taps in the twos and comes back in. Give McAndrew, half a dozen games. See what he's got.
It won't happen though. It's easy to talk about, but it won't happen. We know that.
No. But it should. It should happen. It should happen.
Yeah. Can I also mention now? I know he didn't have a huge game stats wise, but if you want to see like someone who has come into the team and just you can see the class difference that they offer, it's Isaac Cumming. The call before, I think Pat mentioned it. Mentioned his name, and I was like, I should mention him later. I love just him to get a bit more pill because when he does get it, he lowers the eyes and he hits targets that others on our team don't, and he rewards players that lead up. He's not a long bomber generally. He's going to actually be creative with the ball. He makes great decisions and he's such a nice kick. So, look, I think that as much as I think he's a natural half-back flanker, intercepting defender, he does offer us something on that wing. I just think we need to use him more because, he's a lovely ball user.
Fantastic. But we've gone so defensive in our transition. I mean, have you noticed how wide we're playing now and how how we are just so reluctant to try and take on the 45-degree kick, how reluctant we are to switch quickly and to be aggressive. It's just it. There was a game a couple of years ago, pardon me, against Hawthorn where it got to the point where we couldn't get the ball past halfway. We'd just completely lost the ability to transition the ball. Hawthorn just had it locked in, and it was farcical. And there's been times over the last couple of, not so much the GWS game, but certainly against Fremantle, where it started to look a bit like that, where we actually started to run out of ideas of how to transition the ball. And as Patrick said earlier on, we end up getting more and more players, up the ground, and we lose all our structure, and our transition is not quick enough. It's not aggressive enough because teams know that they need to limit our uncontested possession. So they will make sure that they're in our faces. They don't give us the easy ones anymore to get outside of the contest. And we don't have a plan B.
We've managed to make the ground look very small lately with that when we got ball in hand. So that's coaching, and that's also players who, for whatever reason, whether they know they don't have the skill ability or they don't trust their own skill ability for whatever reason, to take those kicks and to hit those important 45 kicks that they score goals so much. They're so important, and if you don't do them, yes, they can cost you goals on the other end, but when we play our best, we tend to have players that back themselves in. And I wonder, how many ball users do we have in the back line that probably actually do trust themselves to take that kick? Hinge is probably one. Keane does it, for good or worse. But apart from that, it feels like we've got a lot of players who play within themselves. We know Lady's not going to try that kick.
But that's another thing. If Lady's not going to take that kick, then all of a sudden you are relying on a Worrell or a Keane or even a Nick Murray, because we haven't got the ball in the right player's hands to be able to deliver it. So that's another liability that Laird brings, the fact that he's not willing to take those kicks. And the amount of times we switch the ball and then we just pin ourselves at the defensive 50 on the boundary.
Oh yeah,
it's like, what are you doing over there? Where's that going?
Yeah, it's the exact same spot, just on the other end of the boundary.
Yeah,
on the other side of the ground. It's like, oh, that was worth it, And then we'll just kick along to a contest down the line anyway. So
exactly. The whole point of switching is to stretch the defensive zone and to create gaps and to be able
and to make the ground
space.
Big. Yeah, but teams aren't allowing us to do it, and we don't need to seem to know what to do because of that. So that's coaching as well.
Yeah. All right, we're I don't know how we've done it, mate, but we've gotten through to the 1 hour 54 mark.
Jeez.
Right? So let's quickly run through the other results real quick with Macca not here. Yep. Melbourne got up over Richmond. Collingwood made short work of Essendon. The Lions got over St Kilda comfortably. The Port North game was pretty reasonable. Port getting up in the end by 9 points. And then today, the Bulldogs smacked Giants. I don't know what to make of the Giants at the moment. The Suns, a bit of an incredible... I switched off the Suns game at halftime with Sydney in control, seemingly. And, the Suns smacked them in the second half. Carlton, a surprise packer, of course, just before we play them. They find some form. And Hawthorn predictably over the Eagles. So the top 8, 24 points, Collingwood and Brisbane, certainly the two form sides in the comp at the moment. The Suns also going pretty well with Hawthorn on 20, and then it's a raft of teams on 16. This is where over the next 2 or 3 weeks this is going to really sort things out. We've got Adelaide, Giants, Geelong and Western Bulldogs inside the 8 on 16 points. Then we've got Fremantle and Port Adelaide outside the 8 on 16 points coming up. Carlton, Essendon and St Kilda on 12, Sydney and Melbourne along with Richmond on 8, North on 4 and West Coast yet to open their account. So I really think the next 4 weeks are going to be huge for our season, a lot's going to depend on how we select, I think, mate.
Seems that way, Finn. It was only a few weeks ago Port were 1-3 and just lost to St Kilda, and and we were 3-1 and just lost to Gold Coast and we're on top of the world. And now we're on the same win-loss column. So it's amazing how quickly things can change. And you're right about Carlton. It's funny, if we wanted to play him, you wanted to play him about 3 or 4 weeks ago. You don't want to play him right now. So they're one of those teams that when they're up and about and they're full of confidence, they're very dangerous. So
very much
that's going to be fun for the team, but maybe it's what we need. Again, like we said before, like these next few games are so important, and this is probably the most winnable, I'd say. I mean, the away showdown is always tough. I'd like to think we can beat Port, but the way we're going and the way they're not going gangbusters. They only just really beat North by having a good first quarter last week. Apart from that, they weren't that great, but they're still going better than us. And then Collingwood at the MCG, is it? I think after that.
Yeah.
So they're good luck. We always take it up to Collingwood, but we never beat them, and they're playing
right.
serious footy. So I think it's West Coast after that. So that's we probably only going to have a win against West Coast if we're not careful. We don't get our act together quickly starting this weekend.
That's right, and a couple of injuries now starting to hit as well, some keys. If Riley misses a couple of weeks, that's going to be critical for us. So
he's powered us out, hasn't he, with those forward entries a lot of the time, with just the sheer marking power he has. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not only that, he's actually also done very well when chopping out in the ruck too. Offers something extra in the ruck. All right, just quickly before we go, I'll just show the tipping comp. We have Michael, Jordan and Callum got 7 this week. So we've got Michael 2 in front on 48, Jordan and Callum on 46, Matt's on 45 along with J-Mac, and then all the way down the bottom. Look at that, I got 2.
We had a 9.
I'm second to last. Are you in this?
No, but I got more than 2.
No, I got 2.
I would have I tipped Freo against us, so that's 1.
In fairness, I didn't put my tips in, so
that doesn't help.
But the week before I got 1, and I did put my tips in, so I thought I'd see if it. So I got 100% improvement by not putting my tips.
Gee whiz.
Oh God! Now as people can tell, I've still got this damn bloody cough, whatever it is. So anyway, very good. Don't forget, like and subscribe if you like what you've heard tonight. Sorry if we come across sometimes a bit negative, but as I said, it's been a long conversation over a long period of time, and you just want to see some light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or the other way around. All right, big man. I reckon we might finish it off there. What do you reckon? Do you have us beating Carlton, mate?
I tend to play the devil's advocate for a few weeks and say we're going to lose. I'm actually going to back us in this week because once it's at home, and I'd like to think that we won't have that nearly as bad as that intensity levels we had against Freo. That was just that was Hawthorn last year. That was both Hawthorn games really, but that was us from a couple of years ago or last year when we were at our worst. I really hope we don't see that again, and I'd like to think that the boys will respond. Obviously Thilthorpe and Fogg what the selections there will be pretty important, but I think it's just the mindset of the team as well. So it'd be a big win for the club to lift for that game. I don't trust the team at the moment, but I'm gonna back them in to have a close win. But if we lose this week, then it's going to get pretty pear-shaped pretty quickly, I think, because as you said, the tough run coming up.
Yeah, well, I picked us against Freo. I didn't expect us to be as dismal as we were. And having said that, and following on from the discussion tonight, I think the result depends on how we treat selection this week, and I don't have any confidence that selection will be what it needs to be. So I think we might get touched up, unfortunately. I hope that we don't. I hope we can bounce back. I hope that the selection committee sees themselves clear to make some changes positively, but in my heart, mate, I just don't see it, unfortunately.
Let's say Hinge out, and let's say Thilthorpe out, and Fogg in. Who else? Who's coming in for Hinge, and any other changes? It sounds like you drop Matt Crouch. Is that right?
I don't want Crouchy in ever again. I would be bringing. I think I'd be bringing in Charlie Edwards for Hinge.
Okay.
Maybe starting him as a sub, pulling Geordie back, Peatling into the first rotation, Sid Draper starting as well. Probably, I think I would, if I'm dropping Crouch, I'm probably going to give Sam Berry first crack at that midfield role. But I also wouldn't mind seeing how Harry's going. At this stage, I mean, up until a couple of weeks ago, I would have favoured Dowling, but he just had a bit of a stinker. So I don't know what's going on there, whether he's injured or whatnot. So I think I'd be bringing in Edwards and Berry, Hinge out forced, Crouch omitted. If Thilthorpe is out, geez, that's a tough one, isn't it?
Oh, and no, okay. So assuming no Fog, what do you do?
I think we stick with Curtin. I think we've got no choice but to stick with Curtin. As that high forward. If we don't have Thilthorpe, you've almost got to go for Burgess, mate, because we haven't got much else.
It feels like we're back in the early rounds of last year now, don't we?
Well, we don't have much else. We don't have much else.
No, I mean it's a real shame that Toby Murray got injured, because he was travelling pretty well, and he actually would have been a real shot to get a debut in.
Yes.
So that's a real shame for him and for us as a club. I could actually see Curtin playing as a second ruck. As well, it sounds desperate, but it's desperate times, isn't it? And maybe we look at a smaller brigade. It's just that's
the alternative, that would just go Mosquito and see what happens.
Do you think Brodie's going to get a look in?
Oh, look, do I think he should? Absolutely, obviously not. But it wouldn't 100% shock me if he came in for Hinge. It wouldn't 100% shock me, big man. But
it's a bit like Murphy a few weeks ago when Rochelle got up.
If Brodie Smith comes in for Mitch Hinge, I'm almost prepared to shut this podcast down, because I just don't see the point anymore in talking about it.
Poor Brodie. Yeah, I do agree though. It would sort of it's nothing against Brodie Smith as a person or a player. It's just it would say a lot, wouldn't it? Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, let's hope. Would you? Tyler Welsh has done bugger all. Would you bring him in? No, he's someone that he's someone where you can't play someone who's not ready like he is. He's got a long way to go. He's a bust, isn't he?
Oh, look, some players.
I know it's an early call. Some
players can have really ordinary first years, and then the penny drops, and then for whatever reason they turn it down pretty quick. He's got a long way to go. I'll put it that way. But you don't lose your talent overnight, but you also can fall back to the pack pretty quickly, and he's done that. So I think that's probably, there's a lot than just ability in terms of that. I think a lot of it's preparation, and whether he's AFL has the AFL player mindset. And
I don't think he does.
You know, it's up.
What I've seen of him, he doesn't look fit at all. Carrying far too much.
Oh, he's better than he was, but he's still not quite up to snuff in that regard. And it's affected his footy as well. You know, you just can't play as good a footy, even at SANFL level, if you're not up to the standard required. So,
yeah. All right, mate. Well, look, thanks to everyone who's joined us in Discord and on YouTube. Another painful podcast. I'm sure we're all a bit jack of it, but there you go. You can only call it as you see it. Hopefully the two old farts will be back with us next week. But, mate, I've appreciated your company tonight and your insight, so thanks very much for that. And we'll bid everyone farewell and see you all next week.
Thanks, guys.
Good night, all.